So we're back. It's the new year, and I think we've both come in with exciting new Christmas viruses, haven't we?
Yes. Many and varied takes of Christmas germ-wise.
That's what I got for Christmas. I don't know about you listeners. But we have a New Year's treat for you. We have 3 new cinema releases to review, and the top of the show, as advertised, is Taika Waititi's Jojo Rabbit.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Loved that trailer. Looked excellent from the trailer.
Yes. But you were unable to get to see it, right?
Correct, yeah.
Due to sick bed duties.
Family stuff.
Right. Well, I did get to see it, so feel free to chip in as ever with anything, any questions.
Things.
But for listeners who are unaware, Jojo Rabbit is Taika Waititi's first film after Thor Ragnarok. It would be fair to say that he's sort of cashed in his Marvel credit to do something he might have had trouble getting off the ground otherwise.
Right.
He's adapted a book called Caging Skies by Christine Luenz, which I understand is not a comedy.
Right. Okay. So he's made it into a comedy.
Yeah, this very much is.
Okay.
It's the story of a young boy, Johannes Jojo Betzler, who is a very enthusiastic Hitler Youth member looking forward to serving the fatherland in that most auspicious year for Nazis, 1945.
Okay.
He lives with his mother, played by Scarlett Johansson. His father is on the front. And he also has an imaginary best friend in the form of a sort of child's version of Adolf Hitler, played by Waititi himself. Mm-hmm. And his world changes when he finds that, for some reason that is unfathomable to him, his mother is hiding a Jewish refugee in her house, played by Thomasin McKenzie, who I'd previously seen being very, very good indeed in Deborah Granick's film Leave No Trace.
Right.
So
he's obviously aware of that the Hitlers don't approve of Jews, and yet he's got one in his loft.
Yeah, Jojo knows Jews essentially as a kind of mythic construct.
Right.
He has this fantasy of writing a field guide to spotting Jews called You Who Jew.
Okay.
Which is full of completely bizarre beliefs he has, like they sleep upside down like bats.
Okay, so I guess it's like the Northern Irish Troubles, the myths they used to tell their kids about, various traits. Yeah.
Have you read Milkman recently as well?
No.
Oh, you'd love Milkman. It's a great book. But yes, essentially like that.
Right, okay.
So it's sort of interesting because, I mean, like you, that trailer came out and I just thought, that's dynamite.
Just that one shot of Taika Waititi leaping over something, and it's like a cardboard cutout version of a human being, and it just looks cartoonish, like it's straight from the Beano or something.
Yeah. And he has a great sense of how to direct visual comedy. There is a lovely scene where Elsa, the Jewish girl, enters the scene and Jojo doesn't know about that she's in the room. But imaginary Hitler does and just freaks out before the audience can see her. And it's a wonderful piece of blocking that just... It takes the action of a character just walking into the scene and makes it into a visual gag. Right. It's fantastic.
That's nice. Entrances and exits are kind of, you don't really think about them very much. It's just so ordinary, but to make something interesting of it, that's good.
Normally when I see like an entrance or an exit in a film, I think, is this a theatre adaptation? And you've just forgot to cut that bit out.
Yeah.
Like generally, film scenes should begin with the characters already together.
Get to the story as quick as possible.
Yeah, there's some lovely bits of visual imagination in it. Of the rest of the film, I mean, it has been quite divisive.
Yeah, I saw Peter Radshaw's review.
Yeah.
He wasn't too chuffed with it.
And Robbie Collin wasn't as well, which I thought was surprising because I thought this would surely click with Robbie Collin.
Right.
It did not. But I can sort of understand it. I haven't read Colin's review yet. I have read Bradshaw's. I think some of the points they make are fair enough. I would say that out of the Waititi films I have seen, it's my least favourite.
Right.
But it is going for some things that are really ambitious and unusual. And I respect that he could probably make a pretty good living just doing films like What We Do in the Shadows, which are essentially just collections of great gags.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd be happy with that. But he is stretching himself. He's stretching himself as an actor as well. I mean, his whatever else you say about the film, his like goofy child version of Hitler is fantastic. I mean, it's so good.
Where do you think it misses the mark then? Where do you think that people would think other critics have disliked it?
I think the most pressing problem it has for me is that right up until the very end of the film, like until Act 3, there is very little sense of jeopardy in it.
Right.
Which I think is a tricky thing with black comedy, and I can understand why some people would say, well, you know, it's obviously I'm not expecting it to be Come and See or Night and Fog. You know, I am aware that this will be a softer version of World War II in a lot of ways. My thing is, I think the black comedies that truly work have a sense of danger. It's like when you look at something like Dr. Strangelove, Heathers, Four Lions, the common denominator is that when a bomb goes off, you are frightened.
Yeah.
You know that people are going to get hurt here.
Right.
That kind of isn't the case. And I wondered whether maybe it could have been fixed by something as simple as setting it in the countryside, where maybe the war hadn't like fully reached out there yet.
The clip I've seen is set in the countryside. Does that? I mean, do you think more of it could have been sidestepped in that way?
They go out to the country to do Hitler Youth training, which is fair, and, you know, those scenes work fine. That's where you do get that incredible scene of Taika Waititi just leaping through the air dressed as Hitler, and it's fantastic. There's some very funny stuff in there. There's Sam Rockwell playing a Nazi colonel who feels like he could be an ancestor of his character in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri.
Right.
That, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there that works. But Jojo and his mother are meant to live in, I don't know if it's actually Berlin or whether it's not stated, but it's definitely a city. And I thought, okay, the cities by 1945 are not good places to live.
No.
And I thought you could have done that and kept the child's perspective. I kept thinking of something like, did you see the Florida Project?
No, it's on my list.
The Florida Project is interesting because the kids throughout treat poverty like it's the most fun game. You know, you've got ruined houses to jump through. Nobody's checking on whether you're doing something irresponsible.
You just take everything as is when you're that little, so...
Obviously, watching it as an adult, you know it's different, but the kids are able to interact with the horrible stuff and still come away enjoying it. And I thought you could have done something similar with this. You know, if Jojo has to be in the city, and I'm not sure he does, he could see, you know, the bombs falling as being quite an exciting adventure that leaves big piles of rubble to play on.
That reminds me of the, what's that film? Oh, I can't remember the name of it. And there's a guy and his son who gets sent to a camp and he pretends to his son that it's all like a game.
Life is Beautiful.
That's it, yeah.
Which I've never seen. I've got some friends who despise that film, I've got to admit. Right. I think the thing is that Life is Beautiful was quite acclaimed, and it got released at a time when fascism and white supremacism seemed like an absolutely dead issue in the late 90s.
Yeah, there wasn't much trace of it then.
I think with Jojo Rabbit, some people have took against it because it's a kind of lighter, sillier film in a more serious time, but...
Okay.
I don't think that's entirely its fault. It's like, I can imagine a version of this which was released in the 90s, and it would be the same film, but when you see small children chanting Heil Hitler, people would think, oh, that's silly. That's so crazy. People did that back then. Now it's quite chilling, but I don't think that's...
Maybe that's a message in
Yeah,
itself.
that's not a problem with the film, I think.
Do you have any scenes that are exclusively adult only? Like there aren't any children in those scenes, so you can get a more mature perspective, maybe?
It's a good question. I'm not sure there are any. There are scenes where children are definitely on the sidelines, and I think you get a good rounded sense of who the characters played by, certainly by Sam Rockwell and Scarlett Johansson, actually are without having to see them on their own. There is one fantastic scene which I think, you know, it improved the film, but it also made me think, oh man, I wish the rest of it had been like that. But there is a fantastic scene with Stephen Merchant as a Gestapo officer who inspects the house. And that is both funny, because Stephen Merchant is a very funny man who has a good sense of how to be sort of physically amusing. But it's also really tense because you know that Elsa's in the house and there's like a squad of Gestapo agents looking round. And that, for me, was the kind of shining moment where it just clicks. I think for a lot of it, Waititi is trying to be more hopeful, which, again, I don't think is a failing, but it just didn't quite land for me. And it has an unaccountably kind of schmaltzy score from Michael Giacchino, who I think is a great composer, but this just did not work for me.
Right.
So it's odd. I think there are some moments which have real courage, and I'm loath to talk about them because some...
A bit spoilerish.
Yeah. Some of them will become obvious as it goes on. I think there is one particular moment which will take you aback a bit that the film had the courage to go that dark.
Okay.
It's just in the context of a film that feels like it's pulling its punches slightly. It's like... I've talked about Rockwell a bit, and like I say, I think he is very good. But at
I like Sam Rockwell.
I mean, he's fantastic, isn't he?
Did you do any dancing in this film? Because it's a damn shame when he doesn't dance.
There are so few opportunities to dance when you play a Hitler Youth leader. But he does get to wear some absolutely outrageous costumes. I mean, the SS uniform is just the start of it. But the problem with his performance, and I think it's a problem with the idea of the character rather than his performance, which is good. The problem with the performance is that he's undercut as soon as you see him. As soon as you see him, you know that he's world-weary, he wishes the war was over, he drinks too much, he doesn't like his job. I think it would have been more impressive if you had started him off as an absolute caricature of a Nazi and gradually shaved it away.
Yeah.
If only because you would have some sort of sense of what Elsa is so frightened of.
Right.
I mean, obviously you have it anyway because you know exactly what Jews in Nazi Germany were frightened of, but there's very little sense of it within the landscape of the film, I think. So,
with it being set in 1945, I guess we have a fairly conclusive ending.
Yeah. And it, like I say, as it goes on and the German defeat becomes more inevitable, you do get that sense of the kind of danger in it. But it feels like something that's been established too late, although there is an astonishingly dark gag late on with Rebel Wilson.
Oh, right, I've heard she's in it.
Yeah.
I've not seen any clips of her, though, I don't think.
She is very briefly in the trailer, but you could be forgiven for missing her. Yeah, she's sending, like, her young Hitler Youth charges off with bombs to fight the Americans, which is... you laugh and then you feel a bit guilty about laughing.
Yeah. Like the average Jimmy Carr gag.
Yes. I can sort of see why Waititi kept those jokes in kind of short supply. I mean, the thing to say about it is that it does seem to have worked with audiences. You know, it's almost certainly earned its money back now. It's got a lot of People's Choice Award at festivals. It is liable to be in the Oscars, if not the front runner that we may have envisaged. Yeah, it's been doing pretty well with awards bodies. It's, up for a lot of the Golden Globes.
Okay.
So I think the idea of doing it as a crowd pleaser has worked. Objectively it's worked. I do regret that I think there was a film that could cut a bit deeper and draw a bit more blood that is somewhere under it. But part of me also thinks when critics complain about it not sort of really getting into Nazi ideology and not really brutally satirising it, you think, I mean, it's no more naive about that stuff than something like The White Ribbon, but everyone was crazy about that, and it won the Palme d'Or because it was black and white and foreign. And listeners, I've said this before, and I'm not going to stop saying it. The White Ribbon's explanation of Nazi ideology constitutes some of the dumbest political cinema ever filmed. But, if you like that and hate Jojo Rabbit, I am going to accuse you of having some sort of comedy bias, of just thinking that things that look serious must be more serious, because it's dumb as paint.
So that's still in cinemas now?
That is still in cinemas now. Yeah, that came out on Wednesday, on the 1st of January, and I suspect it will be in cinemas for a fair bit. I think despite my misgivings, I think Waititi has made a film about children in the Hitler Youth that leaves you with a real skip in your step, which, I mean, he is a pretty incredible guy.
Wow.
Quick mention too for the two child performances in the lead, actually, which are both fantastic. I mean, Mackenzie I knew was great because I think Leave No Trace is a fantastic film, and a huge, huge, huge part of why it works is that her performance is so good. But Roman Griffin Davis, who plays Jojo, I have not consciously seen him in anything before. And he is fantastic. He absolutely carries it and gets that sort of youthful fanaticism just right, where you can still say, oh, but he's a child, but you also know that it's actually quite sinister.
Yeah. It makes me think of sort of child soldiers in hotspots around the world. Yeah, yeah.
And it's not, for all that the film is not exactly the tin drum. It has that DNA in it. It knows that putting like youthful innocence against the Third Reich is a really emotive thing, and I think it and Davis's performance do right by that. So, in terms of recommendations, by the way, I'm really delighted to say that at some point this year there will be an official British release of Tomorrow I'll Wake Up and Scald Myself with Tea.
Hey!
Which is fantastic.
In actual cinemas?
No, as a Blu-ray.
DVD, Blu-ray.
Yeah, DVD and Blu-ray. But still, more than enough, more than I ever expected. And I think that would make a glorious double bill with this. I think it is also kind of fascinating to watch films about Nazism that were made during World War II. So I'd also like to throw in that extraordinary Ealing Films production Went the Day Well by Alberto Cavalcanti.
I think I may have seen that years ago.
Yeah, it's if you have, it'll linger as I sort of reference it, because it's a hard film to forget. But it was made in 1942, and it's about essentially a German invasion of a small English village. And it's a cast full of memorable British character actors. The future Dame Thora Hird is in there when she was Thora Hird when she was
Thora.
When she was amazingly young, younger than you can ever picture her being. It's not one of Ealing's comedies, and the third act, when the villagers take up arms against the invaders, is still genuinely frightening. But it's made with a confidence that this will never have to happen that is really breathtaking for a film made like just, 2 years after Dunkirk, 2 years after everything in the British war effort seemed like it was falling to bits. It's a really courageous film, and I do recommend people watch it.
The world of comics and manga are much, much more complex than I'll ever know. So tune in to 4Panel on the Geek Show podcast network to make that whole world a little less intimidating.
So, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, you can help us keep making these podcasts by donating to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Geek Show. You can find us on Twitter, just search for TGS_The Geek Show. We're on Facebook as The Geek Show. And of course, then there's our website at thegeekshow.co.uk, where you can find our written reviews and the Geek Shop.
Hi, this is Sonny Strait, and you lucky devils are listening to The Geek Show. Consider yourself very, very fortunate.
Okay, so we come to Little Women, directed by Greta Gerwig.
Small ladies.
And it's the story of the March family, which if you don't know, how do you not know? But anyway, I'll tell you. Joe, who wants to be a writer, Amy, the annoying one, the artist, Meg, the homemaker, sort of, and Beth, the dead one. I mean, I don't want to be all spoilersy, but I mean, the book has been out since 1869, so
yes,
you've had 150 years to check it out. I mean, if you're upset about that, I've also got some news about Romeo and Juliet you aren't going to like. And also, baby Jesus was born a few days ago. Well, it's not looking good for April. And it's basically their teenage years and their adult years and sort of how the little women grow into women. And Greta Gerwig doesn't direct it in a straightforward linear fashion. She sort of cuts back and forth to the past and the present, which she does with a nice palette change, actually. So the past is very much couched in a beautiful rosy glow, and the present is more muted, sort of a bluish greyish tinge, I suppose, with the onset of adulthood.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yeah, yay. And
it's okay, take
I suppose the lead character here would be Jo, played by Saoirse Ronan, who does a fantastic job as Jo. She's everything you would want, given the heritage she's brought with her from Lady Bird, and this is another winning partnership between her and Greta Gerwig. She certainly, her character is not afraid to discuss things. She has her opinions. She very much wants to be a writer that's paid to write, and she's strong enough to negotiate the terms of that deal with a publisher. And it's a very admirable character. Laura Dern is in it as Marmee, who is adorable, caring, a bit scatty, but plays it very well. We've got Florence Pugh as Amy, who is normally the annoying character. But in this, I think we get to see, well, her annoyance is bolstered with reasons. So she similarly is annoyed by women's place in the world and her frustration around the fact that she wants to be able to live her own life, earn her own money, be more independent, but the way society is set up at that time. And I'm sort of thinking also a bit this time.
Yes, yeah.
It means that she's hampered in those efforts. And we have Meg. Meg is played by Emma Watson as you've never seen her before, which is, as a perfect wife and mother, I'm a bit worried about her. I mean, I get why she said yes to the project. It's going to be Greta Gerwig and Saoirse Ronan, plus a very high-profile novel in its latest incarnation, but it's a bit of a thankless task, Meg. I mean, her main role is to smile and laugh in domestic situations.
Is this why she's self-partnered, do you think, after this?
Is she what? What do you mean?
That's what she described herself as. She's not single, she's self-partnered.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, that sounds like another conscious uncoupling type
It
thing.
does a bit, doesn't it?
The new way with relationships. Okay,
A bit
fair enough. Well,
Paltrovian.
whatever. Yeah. Do what you need to do. So, I mean, she does a lot of this a great catalogue work. I mean, it's, the way you do when you know a camera's on you. Lots of like laughing attractively at some crochet.
Look, over there, an eagle.
An eagle. Oh, how marvellous. So if the girls were on social media, this would be, I mean, Meg would be for a Facebook post, basically. It's nice enough, but it's bland. I was sort of thinking about the girls and their various social media incarnations if it was brought into modern day, and I would have to say that Jo would be Twitter because of the opinions, and she's prepared to argue things, and Amy with her painting would be obviously Instagram. It's a very visual medium, and Tragic Beth, very much the MySpace of the March sisters. Timothy Chalamet's in it as well. Lovely Timothy Chalamet. He's fine. He's looks great in this. He's still in need of a good meal. But I really like his approach to performance. I think it's unique to him. He has the same sort of mannerisms that he's carried forward from other films like Call Me By Your Name. And it's nice. It's not bland. It's him sort of grabbing hold of the role and putting his own spin on it. So that's really good.
Yeah, I like those actors who are kind of auteurs, you know, who have a bit of their own sensibility in each project.
Yeah.
Like Sam Rockwell, we were talking about earlier. Sam Rockwell's a great example of that.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much has the hallmark of that kind of actor. Also, a quick mention to Chris Cooper, who was in... the last time I saw him was probably American Beauty.
I was going to say, it feels like ages since I've seen Chris Cooper in anything.
He's much nicer in this. And they've got him up to make him look like Mark Twain as well. So,
oh, wow.
So yes, much lucky like you, but apart from that. So lots of updating of women's attitude to women's place in the world, feminist perspectives. Jo has a great determination and pursues her dream of being a writer, and she gets it. She actually I don't think I'm trying not to include spoilers, but you know.
The book is old.
The book is old. So she manages successfully to avoid, you know, taking stupid jobs, but cuts straight to writer. She gets that, which is great. Saves her lots of call centre work, no doubt. And also, a really good thing is that she is then able to provide employment for her family as well, for certain members of her family. And there's a little controversy about Jo's marrying at the end, when all the way through the book she's practically saying, I don't need anybody, I'm quite happy on my own, why would you get married, blah, blah, blah. And she talks to the publisher about the book that she wants to publish, and he says that the lead character needs to get married to satisfy the public. And it's a confusion of, it's a bit Inception actually, because we've got Louisa May Alcott, who was single her whole life and people have speculated was a lesbian. Then we've got Jo, Louisa May Alcott's reading of Writing Jo, and then we've got Jo publishing her book as well. So there's like 3 levels of fiction there, and they get a little bit confused at the end because Jo herself gets married to this random choice of guy. And Saoirse Ronan and Greta Gerwig have said that is so out there and random that it's difficult to take it seriously, but they put it in anyway. But why did they put it in? Did they have to do that? Did they really have to do that in 2019? Surely they could have maybe taken a hint from Louisa May Alcott and just left that out. He's a perfectly nice guy, but maybe have the courage to take it that one step further. So, but I mean, that said, it's an extremely good film. It's not nearly as schmaltzy as I've found in previous adaptations. It has a fantastic energy, especially when all 4 are together. It's bustling, noisy, joyful, colourful. And I think it's definitely a film to recommend going to see. It's lovely. There's something different about their costumes too. I mean, I've never watched Little Women and thought, ooh, where did she get that dress from? The 1800s, Sarah, she got her dress from the 1800s. But the costume is obviously like straight out of the Victorian version of the Fat Face catalogue. So I'm kind of like going, oh, that's quite nice actually.
Yes.
There's a few interesting things to look out for in the film. In Victorian New England, there was a shop called a beanery, and I've no idea what that is. I mean, I'm guessing it sells beans.
Sold beans, yeah. It was
Yeah.
like the Victorian version of Jelly Bean Factory. That's what it was.
Or at a push, brimless hats for Trustafarians. There's a portrait of Laurie's father who is deceased, and it's in the study of the Mark Twain lookalike, and his father looks like Dennis Waterman. It's quite distracting, but it's there. Check it out. At one point, Timothy Chalamet holds a baby. I think it's quite important going forward that we don't give Timothy Chalamet a baby to hold. It's just not his area. It's just like, oh God, what do I do with this?
I mean, he's doing better than Damon Herriman in Judy and Punch, right?
Talking about going dark. And obviously, it's funny, it's like 1869, so they can't do one of the big rom-com tropes, which is an airport dash to find the love of your dreams. But they do sort of an equivalent of it, which is amusing. So yes, that's Little Women. Highly recommended. It's a very good version if you're into that sort of thing. And it's out now at cinemas.
Nice. I am very enthusiastic to go and see it, and I love that Greta Gerwig followed up something small and personal like Lady Bird by saying, nope, taking one of the big books of the American canon and doing my own version of it. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it could certainly stand to be updated. It does have a lot of these kind of sweet, treacly moments which, you know, could really... It doesn't apply to... I don't think it applies to a modern audience, so it's good she updated that.
One minor thing before we move on. Yeah. This is something that Aidan and me were talking about on the Christmas specials.
Right.
What stage are you at in your Florence Pugh journey?
Well, interestingly, I have obviously seen Little Women, and I like her quiet determination in that. And I noticed that what was flashing up on my feed was Florence Pugh is also in Lady Macbeth.
Yes.
So I watched it last night, and it's extremely good. She just has this, she doesn't do all the bells and whistles, she just gets the job done. I mean, in that film, obviously, that's a very sad, dark and horrendous way. But I like her depiction of Lady Macbeth very much. It's one where she just throws away her cares. She doesn't care what people think of her. She just goes ahead and does things. She does what she feels is necessary in difficult circumstances, but also there is a little bit of psychopath there. Yeah,
absolutely.
So...
But I think she's fantastic. Yeah. I first saw her in Cavill Morley's The Falling, a film which I absolutely adore.
I'm sure I've seen her in something else, but I can't remember what it is.
She's just great, I think.
She is. Yes, indeed. I might have a little check, see what else she's been in.
So while you have a little check, I'm just going to have a quiet breakdown in the corner because we are moving on to Cats.
Yeah. I just want to say that I'm here for you. I have counselling skills qualifications, so whatever you share, I won't repeat it. I mean, obviously the guys listening totally will, but I won't.
So this is quite a nicely bookended show, isn't it? Because we started off by saying, "Oh, Jojo Rabbit! I saw the trailer; it was amazing." So what's the film like? Mm-hmm. Well, Cats, we all saw the trailer and it was amazing. I mean, not a positive version of the word amazing, but it amazed us. And the first thing that struck me as I sat down to watch it is that however many times you have seen that trailer, and I've seen it more times than I care to mention, I wanted to watch it until it made sense, and it never did. But however many times you've seen that trailer, nothing can prepare you for the experience of seeing it in the theatre. Like, for the first half hour, literally, my jaw was just hanging open, unable to properly process anything that I was seeing. I'd like to give you a plot synopsis, but I can't.
And why is that?
It has no plot.
It doesn't have one.
It is literally plotless.
Does that mean that the musical it came from didn't really have one as well?
It is my understanding.
T.S. Eliot didn't build one in?
It is my understanding that the musical is basically plotless. And I have to say, I haven't seen the musical, but I will say this. If you were a fan of it, nothing in this film really made me reflect badly on the show.
Right.
A lot of the things that I thought were dreadful in the film were films that I thought, right, they haven't reworked that from the stage show enough. Mm-hmm. There is an extended dance number which absolutely screams, take to your seats, it's the start of Act 2. And it just kills whatever pacing the film has, which is very little. It just kills it stone dead.
Yeah, I think that is the difficulty with musicals in general, that it always is going to interrupt the flow.
Yeah.
Singing a random song.
Yes. I mean, I think the other thing that we have to say about that dance number is that Tom Hooper cannot frame it at all. And
right.
I feel like I have to talk about Tom Hooper because I have complex feelings about the man.
Yeah, he has not a terrible CV.
And I know there are some people who really hate his work, but they hate it in ways that, to me, are contradictory. The two main complaints about Tom Hooper are, one, that he makes safe, bland, middlebrow Oscar bait, and two, that he makes completely insane creative decisions and shoots everything at crazy angles with the widest lens he can. It's like, okay, say what you want about that, but it's not bland. It's not forgettable.
No.
One of my main disappointments with The Danish Girl, above and beyond... I'm not going to say Eddie Redmayne. It's fine. I've moved on. I hate Andrew Scott now.
I was pretty sure you were going to say him then.
It's not Eddie Redmayne, but above and beyond all the things to do with representation and casting cis actors as trans characters and all the other things that people talked about when it was released. My main disappointment is that it was a Tom Hooper film that was filmed like a standard Oscar season drama, and I just thought, oh, that's quite boring, really, isn't it? I mean, all of those compositions in The King's Speech and The Damned United where people like crammed into the corner of frames, or it's Les Miserables and we've got the camera with a 2mm lens crammed up Russell Crowe's nostril as he bellows. It's like, none of it's boring, I say. It reminded me slightly of some of the Czech and Slovak directors I love, like Jan Nemek and Gerard Hertz, and you can say that is an insane way to make a heartwarming Oscar season movie about a king learning to stop stuttering. Maybe it is, but I kind of like that style. And Cats made me sort of understand how his critics probably felt, because it is also filmed in an inappropriate style, and it's filmed in an inappropriate style that I hated, so it's really gone for the double.
It's ticked all those boxes.
Yeah. For some reason... I mean, there were loads of misjudged things in here. The fact that he saw this musical with people like prancing around in furry leotards and thought, yes, this needs photorealistic CGI. That's a bad idea.
Yeah.
But it was a bad idea when they did it this summer in The Lion King, and that made over $1 billion worldwide, so what do I know? The bad idea that I'm having trouble getting past in terms of Hooper's actual blocking and mise-en-scène is that there is so much of this film that's shot like it's the Normandy landings in Saving Private Ryan, where rather than, have these big graceful dollies and camera sweeps that you'd get in like a Vincent Minnelli musical or something classical like that, he has the cameraman just take up a handheld camera and run up to the cats.
Right.
And if anything, that's the opposite of what I want. I want the cats to get away from me. So it's really problematically styled, and there are loads of instances where he just doesn't get the basic element of the film in frame, which I would have thought would be difficult for an Oscar-winning director to mess that up. But there is, for example, a scene where Mr. Mistopheles has to light candles using his magic.
Right.
And the point of what he's doing is to light the candles. That's the shot. Somehow Hooper connives to get Mephistopheles in shot, to get his magic wand in shot, but the candles he is pointing the wand at are out of frame.
Not in shot.
You don't understand what he's doing until you get a wide shot of all the candles lit. You just think he's randomly just flicking his magic wand at anything he sees. And there are loads of things in it like that.
So it's not just a one-off, this has happened like repeatedly throughout the film. Good grief.
I mean, I can't even describe it without making it seem more normal than it is, but the first instance where McCavity disappears is bizarre because the only hint you get that anything odd has happened is Francesca Hayward's expression. You don't know what she's puzzled by. You know she's puzzled by something. And later on you see McCavity disappear and you think, oh, right, that was probably the thing, wasn't it? Right. We could have done with knowing that earlier in the scene that would, be completed.
So it's not knitting together terribly well.
No.
Right.
And I don't know whether this is something to do with the fact that this was infamously finished directly before the premiere, that they had to release an updated version in theatres with more completed effects, famously.
So it's run over time-wise, we reckon.
Maybe that's it. And, that was a stupid decision because the release date has killed it. If you look at something like The Greatest Showman or Bohemian Rhapsody, those were films that got shooing from the critics, but they came out in November and January and got an audience in who, didn't read critics' reviews, knew that they liked the songs, went and made them a big hit, largely because November and January are not big years. And Cats could have done that. I mean, we have snarked on it all the time, but the truth is not many people pay much attention to film Twitter and its hilarious memes. It could have been a hit had it not opened opposite The Rise of Skywalker, which is a breathtakingly stupid decision. But in the whole film, I think normally when I watch a bad film, I like to isolate the sort of Gina Gershon in Showgirls performance, the one who seems to get it. Right. The one who seems to be in on the joke. The thing is with Cats is there's actually quite a lot of performances that are good. It's definitely not the actor's fault. I mean, not everyone works. Judi Dench seems to have no idea what she's signed up for, which is fair enough. Right. Neither do I. Idris Elba gives a very strange performance as McCavity.
I'm not convinced by Idris Elba.
You won't be convinced that he exists after this. You will go to sleep thinking, it's okay, Idris Elba isn't real, it's just a movie, he can't hurt me.
And how was Jason Derulo?
I liked Jason Derulo, actually. He plays Rum Tum Tugger, whose opening song screams Andrew Lloyd Webber bought a copy of Young Americans and thought, yeah, I could do that. It's not a great song. But he, like most of the younger cast, is actually very charismatic and enjoys performing. It's the less well-known actors that generally work. Danny Collins and Neve Morgan as Mungo Jerry and Rumpelteazer, the two criminal cats.
Right.
They're fun. And, for a brief moment, I thought, oh, this works. This might be what people pay to see the musical for.
Right.
It's people having fun, pretending to be cats, knocking things over, smashing stuff. There's a kind of misrule to it that's a bit entertaining. Similarly, the bit with Taylor Swift as Bombalurina, the Bombalurina doesn't have a description like most of them do. Ian McKellen is Gus the theatre cat because of course she is. Mm-hmm. Of course he is. Idris Elba is McCavity the mystery cat. That makes sense. Bombalurina is just Bombalurina. I assume this is because they thought the skanky cat was a bit inappropriate, but
you can't say that of Taylor Swift.
Trust me, it's this year I have come out as a Taylor Swift fan, and what an interesting year to do that this was. But it's not just Swiftie bias that makes me think that the Bombalurina bit is actually rather good. I mean, she seems to grasp more than anyone else that this is about performing to the camera. You know, if the audience aren't there, and the audience, as I've said, are the things that makes Cats make sense as a theatre property. But if we're going to handicap ourselves like that, make it a music video, play to the camera, perform. That's the point. Herman Derulo gets it. And I also have to say, in Taylor Swift's solo song, the instrumentation is dramatically improved to the extent that I wondered if it was in her contract that she said
would have control over that.
Yeah. That she would say, look, I'm an internationally prominent singer and songwriter.
Don't make me look
Yeah, and do not give me the incidental music for Sylvester McCoy either Doctor Who-ass Korg synthesizers that you have slathered all over the rest of this movie, because I have to go to some quite obscure areas of my knowledge to make sense of Cats. And when that fanfare started up at the start, I thought, this is some Kef McCulloch shit right here. It's 1987. You've tuned in for part 1 of Time and the Rani, and you're getting this. So it's horrible. I mean,
and there was some costume fails as well, was there?
I could see Judi Dench's human hands, which I understand is a marker of the unfinished version. I did not see the bit that amused everyone else, which is apparently in one of the scenes in the unfinished version. There's just a group number where there's like one guy just dressed in a hoodie. Like they forgot to do that one. Maybe it was in the cut I saw, but I'm devastated I missed it. It has this lead performance by Francesca Hayward, who is staggeringly beautiful, as is Laurie Davidson as Mr. Mistopheles. And I checked their actual photos. I wanted to make sure I was not responding to the cat. I want to be very clear on that. They are both very beautiful and charismatic, and I would enjoy seeing them as a couple in literally anything that wasn't this. But she's sort of, I mean, she's not bad, but she's undercut at every turn. The truth is, this is a review show. You know, this is a series of skits where someone comes along, and it is exactly like that Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt bit about Cats, where they come on, they say, I'm Wagadoodoo, the hairiest cat, and then they sing a song about what it's like to be Wagadoodoo, and then they go off, and that's it. That's their bit in the show.
That's the whole film.
That's the whole film.
Jeez Louise.
You can do that in theatre.
Is it parenthesized by like the big Let's Tell You a Tale of T.S. Eliot's Cats, or
that's what they should have done. Yeah,
like in the olden days when they'd open a book and say, the book of Cats.
I was thinking during the show about what could make this feel like a movie. And I do think some sort of framing story would work. As it is, Victoria, the Francesca Hayward character, is just dumped in an alleyway by her owner. And then suddenly all of these cats jump out at her and say, are you a jellicle? We are jellicles. Here is jellicles. We are jellicles. Here's what jellicles do. Here's what jellicle... You get to the end of it and you're still thinking, what the hell is a jellicle? What are you on about? What is this rubbish?
It sounds like the Jets and the Sharks. Are you a jet? Oh, wrong musical.
Oh, God, it is a bit like that, actually. It's West Side Story with cats. I think the problem that Hayward has is that this is not a story. And there's no reason to have a viewpoint character when it's not a story. You should just be able to go from scene to scene. It means that most of what she's doing is just looking awestruck at things she's seeing. And it's like, well, if I wanted to see the face of someone who cannot believe what they're seeing, I'd bring a mirror into the cinema. Because the other thing about Francesca Hayward, which goes back to Hooper, is that she is very high up at the Royal National Ballet.
Right.
And when you can see her dancing, it is very good. Again, when you can see her dancing, when Hooper has not made the inexplicable decision to shoot everyone in his musical essentially from nipples up.
Doesn't show the legs and feet.
I mean, there are scenes where he does, but there are so many scenes which are either tight close-ups or head and shoulders or waist.
Like a rush job to you.
I think the thing about the CG, the thing about the effects is that on a technical level, they're not bad. There are some of them that are unfinished, but texturally it works. You believe that fur is real.
Yeah.
The problem is that the character designs are insane.
Right.
That's the killer thing. I think you could have had an extra year to finish it, and it might have looked better in some ways, but it comes back to this problem that the creative decisions being made are insane. You're starting with, let's take a plotless musical review where a bunch of people come on, sing a poem and walk off, and turn it into a 2-hour movie.
That reminds me of certain French shows I've seen, and it's very much about the spectacle of it. And there's a very loose, tenuous story sort of draped across the top. But really, it's about the spectacle and looking at somebody in a nice costume, followed by somebody else who comes on in a nice costume. This is something I've seen like a handful of times and it's European cinema, European theatre. And I wondered if that is he European, Hooper, or is he?
He's British, yeah.
So he's kind of European, but not for
much longer. Yes. Yeah. And part of the appeal of that kind of show, I think, is in the fact that you're watching a live performance and it works as live performances do. And that's why Swift and Derulo walk away with the honours to me, because they are performers who get that this is a performance. You know, Ian
and
McKellen.
The other ones are maybe sort of like struggling with that whole breaking the fourth wall thing.
Yeah. I mean, God help him. I love Ian McKellen as much as anyone does, but
do we all.
He is playing this like he's still playing King Lear.
Oh.
You know, he is going on as... And his song, to be fair, is about a cat who's, you know...
Theatre cat.
Yeah, a theatre cat who's getting older, had a great life, and now is, you know, forgetting things and starting to wind down a bit. But for the love of God, it's a youth certificate musical about cats. You don't have to make me feel like I'm actually watching an Alzheimer's patient having a breakdown in front of me. It's really misjudged. But I find it hard to blame any of the actors here, apart from James Corden, obviously, because his number just plays to everything that is irritating in his screen persona. And I'm not reflexively anti-Corden. You know, I thought he was fine in The History Boys. I think
he's very good in that.
Yeah, it's fine, but... This role he was cast in because he's Chacho Corden.
Yeah.
They want that performance, and God help them, they got it.
Yeah, they want the audience for that as well.
But most of the actors, I can't really find fault with them. I just think that they are trapped in a film that cannot work and has these bizarre self-sabotaging decisions built into every part of it. Like, if McKellen feels like he's acting in a different film to Jason Derulo, it's because he probably is. You know, there's no overarching vision to it other than let's give everyone these horrifying cat costumes. And
so was do you think the costumes were they actual costumes, or did they have CGI applied to them, or was it totally CGI as a costume? Or
there's a bit of controversy over this. I mean, they are obviously CGI.
Yes.
They are clearly CGI, and they are CGI in ways that sometimes does not blend quite into the human face, leaving it with the unnerving sense that Jennifer Hudson in particular has a face that moves independently of her head.
That's so disturbing.
I know. So it is CGI, but interestingly, there was a comment made by Taylor Swift where she said we didn't have any of that motion capture stuff on We just acted and animated. And there's been some debate over this. Some people have pointed to set photos where people do seem to have some monitors on, just not as many as the kind of dots all over the face ones that actual good motion capture uses.
Right.
So I think that's part of it. I think
your movement does change if you've
Yeah.
got a big bulky costume with a big cat's belly to play with and sort of unusual shaped legs. And it's going to change your movement from the inside as well as the outside.
there is also...
and if they haven't allowed for that,
Yeah.
that's going to impede things and make it look slightly off, but you're not sure why.
It's a bit like those bits in The Irishman where, and I really liked the CG in The Irishman. I thought it worked very well, apart from those occasional moments where De Niro has to beat someone up and you can see, oh wow, he's not moving like a young man.
Yeah, and the same for Joe Pesci as well. He was so slow throughout it.
Yeah.
And Harvey Keitel as well. I think both of them are just of an age now, especially Keitel. I saw him in, what did I watch him in? Madame, and I noticed it there as well. He's he is a bit more frail than he was, and it does sort of, it's not going to come across as like a guy who's young, despite the CGI on top. It's going to affect who you are on the inside, but with it being sort of like a newish technology, people are going to take a while to adapt to the different kind of acting process that's going to involve.
Yeah.
I think.
And I mean, the other thing about it is that The Irishman has a problem of old men being unable to act like young men. And Cats has a problem of all sorts of actors being unable to act like freakish anthropomorphized cats, which is really... there's a whole nest of problems in there, I think. So overall, I do recommend you see it. I mean, you're never going to see anything like this again. In
the same way that you would recommend a Victorian goes to see a freak show.
I mean, yeah, I was staggered. I think there are so many bad movies made that are safe and that are looking for an inbuilt audience or focus grouped into blandness. And here is a $90 million Universal Studios Christmas release that appears to be made by the inmates of an asylum for the criminally insane. There is not one rational filmmaking decision made for the entirety of the film, and it's stupefying. I watched this instead of Star Wars, and I feel like I made the right call.
Right.
I'm happy with what I've done.
Right. Looking back on his back catalogue film-wise, there's not a great deal of CGI there.
No, that's the thing. I mean, Les Miserables has spectacle, but as far as I'm aware, it's mostly physical spectacle. Like, it's the CGI backdrops and the normal sort of costume drama stuff, but the things I remember from that are people hauling massive boats and crowds of people at the barricades.
Yeah.
Nothing that makes me think this guy can handle a film that is, at its heart, effects-driven. I mean, he's never going to get an effects film again. I don't think it'll kill his career, because I don't think careers can be killed these days. I mean, M. Night Shyamalan was given rolls of the dice.
Those were the choices.
But I think he will continue to do stuff, but it will be at that smaller level that he has honestly proved himself capable of making enjoyable films on. No one will ever give him something this big again. So stay tuned in 2020 for Tom Hooper to be announced to direct the next Marvel movie, because why not?
Because why not? In 2020 we might hear a reboot of Biker Grove that he directed in 97.
Did he?
He did. He did a few episodes in 1997, so...
That's his golden
age. We can always go back to that.
I would love to watch that again and see if it is shot like The King's Speech, if Ant and Dec's heads are just at opposite ends of the frame and it's a big wide lens and everything's out of focus. I would love to know. So, coming out on Friday, we have a film by an Oscar-winning former British theatre director who I think has kept his nose a bit cleaner, Sam Mendes.
Oh, yeah, lovely Sam Mendes. This is 2017. Sorry, 1917.
It's 2020 at the current rate, but yeah, it's 1917, his one-take World War I drama. We have a 4K restoration of Alejandro Jodorowsky's El Topo, which you can bet I'll be dragging Rob and Mick to see. We have a film that hasn't got great reviews, and it saddens me because it's a great story and a great central piece of casting. It's Benedict Andrews' Seberg, starring Kristen Stewart as Jean Seberg.
Yeah, I saw a trailer for that yesterday. It sort of come up from nowhere for me. I didn't realise it was even out.
I think it's a really fascinating story, and I've been waiting for a Jean Seberg biopic for ages because she had such a heartbreaking life. So I'll give it a chance. I'd like that to be good. And there's the film that we will be making Film of the Week the next week, if only to, keep Aidan from open rebellion. It's the Safdie Brothers' Uncut Gems, the film which will probably get Adam Sandler an Oscar nomination very soon.
Really?
Yes!
Really? I'm incredulous.
The cast for this is almost as balmy as the cast for Cats. You realise it's got Adam Sandler, Lakeith Stanfield, Idina Menzel, and The Weeknd.
Okay. Okay, random.
Yeah.
Different audiences pulled in there.
Definitely, yeah. I forgot to answer the main question about Jason Derulo's performance in Cats. No, at no point does he shout his own name.
There's no tagging taking place in this film.
He does shout milk very loud at one point, implying that he might be playing the former Labour MP Mike Gapes. But other than that, that's the last obscure Cats reference I'm going to make for this week, because that's the end of the show. Until next week with Uncut Gems, I've been Graham.
And I've been Sarah.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.